Hello, I'm Hank, and this is my presentation about solutions to FIFA's corruption scandal. What do I mean? I'm talking about whenever the multiple FIFA officials were arrested for racketeering, money laundering, and wire fraud. What do all these terms mean? Well, racketeering is defined as a pattern of illegal activity that is carried out as part of an enterprise that is owned or controlled by those who are engaged in that activity. So it's a blanket term for any illegal activity that is done typically by an organized crime group. What's money laundering? The process of taking the funds of criminal activity and making them look legal. So if you take the funds and then you put them in a bank and an offshore account, and then you can use those funds to buy whatever you want. Well, what's wire fraud? Fraud committed by means of electronic communication. So it's when someone obtains money based on false pretenses using electronic communication. So obviously, the main focus is FIFA and the scandal that happened this summer. In May 2015, the first few officials were arrested, and then later that month, 14 more were also arrested, and they were accused of bribery schemes and receiving kickbacks. On Thursday, December 3rd, 2015, 16 more were also arrested. This brings the total to 41. And the main charges that are being brought against them are racketeering, money laundering, and wire fraud. And most of these are still in the court system right now. What are the main laws? The main laws are these three: Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, and the Money Laundering Control Act of 1986, and the Bank Secrecy Act. So what is the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act? It's also known as the RICO Act, and it was officially a law on October 15th, 1970. And the purpose is to prevent organized crime from being a part of legitimate business. And it's broad enough to encompass most of the activities by the organized crime groups. What is the Money Laundering Control Act? It's passed to make the money laundering cases more uniform. And it also lays out what money laundering is and the penalties for it. So the maximum penalty is 20 years in prison and a $500,000 fine, or twice the value of the amount. So it's anyone who's involved in the transfer of the proceeds of illegal activities. And then there's the Bank Secrecy Act. Its official name is the Currency and Foreign Transactions Reporting Act of 1970. This law requires financial institutions like banks to assist in the detection of any illegal activity. And the main way it does this is that banks must notify the government if there are transactions that exceed $10,000 on one day. So obviously, if someone's putting $100 million into a bank account, that's kind of fishy. So this is what this act is doing. It's going to notify the government of these transactions so that the government can send in the FBI or whoever to investigate these acts. So why did this scandal happen? FIFA is not regulated by any country's laws. So it's basically just a large business. So there's not really one country that can have laws that regulate it. So this is a problem because there's no laws that can keep them accountable and honest. And there's also no way within FIFA to hold the officials accountable for their actions. It's basically an honesty policy, which hasn't worked out very well. And there's not really a good way to verify their financial activity although they do post a balance sheet at the end of every year, like every other large business, it's pretty difficult to look at their actions and what they do with their finances. Oh, so we're going to talk about the Olympic bribery scandal, which is pretty similar to the FIFA scandal, just because there's not really a way to hold those officials accountable for their actions. So it was fixed by preventing bid cities from giving anything more than nominal value to the IOC. So this will stop bribes, obviously. And then there's the oversight of the selection of which city would host. And this was made regulated more so that it was easier to tell if there was a bribe going on. And then also they changed the way that the elections work so that the public can keep them accountable more. And the main way that this was forced was that most of their sponsors come from the US, and so the US passed a law that prevented sponsors from donating any money to the IOC. So if they can't get money, obviously they're going to want to pass these reforms. And so they passed the reforms and they got their sponsors back, and that's how they were forced to reform. So FIFA needs to do something that's a little similar to that. If we can have every country that's a member pass a law that prevents them from getting that sponsorship money, this would fix the problem. Because obviously they like their money, and so if we can stop them from having their money until they can be more accountable for their actions, this would fix everything. And if we can look at their finances more often, and if we can audit them more thoroughly, this would help track those finances. And then if we can limit the terms of the president and other high-ranking FIFA members, this would make sure that they aren't in office long enough to have these scandals and have them go by unnoticed. So, we talked about the 41 FIFA members that were arrested for racketeering and money laundering and wire fraud. And we look at the laws that they were charged under: the Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act, and the Money Laundering Control Act, and the Bank Secrecy Act. So why did it happen? There's no way to hold FIFA accountable. So there's not really a way to track with their actions, and they can just do whatever they want. And there's no laws that govern FIFA, as they are just a business basically. So no one country's laws will really govern FIFA. And it's very difficult to verify their finances. So how do we fix all these? If we take away their sponsors until they make reforms to make themselves more accountable, this would fix it. And if we can audit them on a regular basis so we can track their finances and make sure that they aren't doing anything fishy, this would help. And if we can limit the terms of these high-ranking FIFA officials, this would help drastically. There's more excited? Thank you very much.